In a Renaissance city steeped in secrets, codebreaker Lucien Delacroix races to decipher a mysterious cipher before it unleashes chaos. As assassins close in and betrayal seeps through every shadow, he must face the ghosts of his past to save the city's future. A story of mystery, danger, and the power of hidden truth. The flickering candlelight casts long shadows across the cluttered desk where Lucien Delacroix sat hunched, his slender fingers tracing the faded ink of an ancient manuscript. The air in the cramped chamber was thick with the scent of aged parchment and beeswax, mingling with the faint aroma of wet stone from the rain tapping softly against the stained glass window. Outside, the Renaissance city-state roared with life, its cobblestone streets teeming with merchants hawking spices and silk, nobles draped in embroidered velvets, and common folk weaving through the throng. Yet, inside this quiet sanctuary, Lucien existed in a world apart, a realm of symbols and ciphers, where every line and curve concealed secrets waiting to be unraveled. His sharp eyes, framed by the shadow of his hooded cloak, darted across the page as he meticulously transcribed the strange characters. The manuscript had come into his possession through a network of informants and antiquarians who recognized his talent for cracking the most elusive codes. Tonight, however, the message before him was unlike any he had seen. A tangled web of cryptic symbols interlaced with religious iconography and archaic numerals. As Lucien's practiced mind worked to untangle the threads, a chilling realization began to dawn. The text spoke of shadows, whispers of death that would soon fall upon the city's ruling council. It predicted a series of assassinations, each more devastating than the last, designed to unravel the delicate balance of power maintained through generations. At first, Lucien regarded the parchment with skepticism. Such ominous portents were not uncommon in his line of work, and many ciphers turned out to be elaborate hoaxes or remnants of forgotten rituals. Yet the precision and layered complexity of this cipher hinted at something far more sinister. His fingers trembled slightly as he sketched the recurring symbols onto a fresh sheet of parchment. Intertwined serpents, fragmented stars, and veiled eyes that seemed to watch from the margins. The silence of the room was broken only by the scratching of quill on paper and the distant tolling of the city bell marking midnight. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the window pane like a warning. The next morning, the city awoke to a shock that rippled through its gilded facades and shadowed alleys alike. A prominent member of the council had been found dead, murdered, in a manner eerily consistent with the cipher's grim predictions. Rumors spread swiftly, carried on the breath of merchants, and whispered in the dim corners of taverns. Fear seeped into the populace, and suspicion poisoned the streets. Lucien felt the weight of the discovery settle upon his shoulders with oppressive gravity. The cipher was no longer a curiosity or an academic puzzle. It was a harbinger of chaos. Determined to prevent further bloodshed, Lucien resolved to delve deeper into the mystery. He gathered his sparse belongings and wrapped his cloak tighter around his lean frame before stepping into the bustling world outside. The city seemed transformed, the usual vibrant colors muted beneath a pall of unease. Eyes glanced furtively from shadowed doorways. Conversations halted when he approached. Trust was a currency more scarce than gold. As he navigated the labyrinthine streets, Lucien's mind raced through possibilities. Who would benefit from such calculated destruction? Could the ruling council itself be fracturing beneath the surface? Or was an external force seeking to exploit the city's vulnerabilities? The cipher was a key, but the lock it opened was hidden in the tangled politics and dark alleys of the city. Back in his chamber, he pored over the manuscript by candlelight, cross-referencing ancient texts and records of past political upheavals. The patterns in the cipher suggested a timeline, a countdown to further deaths that would escalate until the council was left in ruins. Each symbol, each coded phrase, was a piece of a deadly puzzle. Lucian's solitude was broken by a soft knock at the door. He opened it cautiously to find a messenger, a young boy with wide eyes and a breathless warning. A second council member had been assassinated, and the city was teetering on the brink. The codebreaker's heart hardened with resolve. There was no time for doubt or hesitation. The cipher's message was clear, and the stakes could not be higher. As shadows lengthened once more over the Renaissance city, Lucien Delacroix stepped into the gathering storm, determined to untangle the deadly code and protect the fragile order before all was lost. Outside, the murmurs of the city grew louder, carrying with them the promise of intrigue and betrayal that would soon engulf every alley and chamber of power. The dim light of dusk had settled over the Renaissance city-state, casting long, wavering shadows into the narrow alleys that twisted like veins beneath the grandeur of the ruling council's marble facades. Lucien Delacroix moved silently, his cloak drawn tight around his lean frame, his sharp eyes scanning every flicker of movement in the fading light. The cipher he had discovered haunted his thoughts, its cryptic symbols weaving a tapestry of impending doom that stretched closer to the council's heart with each passing day. As he turned a corner into an alley veiled in shadow, a familiar figure awaited him. Isabella Fiora, petite, with eyes like sharpened glass. She emerged from the darkness with a grace born of years navigating the city's underbelly. Her plain dress belied the sharpness of her wit and the depth of knowledge she commanded in the whispered networks of informants and secret meetings. "Lucien," she said softly, her voice barely rising above the distant hum of the marketplace. "I've heard murmurs faint, but growing louder factions moving against the council. Your cipher. It's not just a warning, it's a map of their intent." He nodded, the weight of his discovery settling heavier with her confirmation. "I need to know more. The origins of this message, the hands that crafted it." Together, they slipped deeper into the labyrinth of alleys, where the city's true pulse beat beneath the veneer of political order. Lanterns swung gently in the evening breeze, casting pools of amber light that barely pierced the thickening darkness. The air was thick with the scent of damp stone and distant smoke, mingled with the whispers of those who lived in the margins. Merchants closing shop, thieves prowling for easy prey, and informants trading secrets like currency. Isabella led him to a concealed entrance behind a stack of crates, a narrow stairway winding down into the bowels of the city. The faint murmur of voices drifted upward, punctuated by cautious laughter and the scrape of wooden stools. Inside, the tavern was a cavern of shadow and murmurs, its patrons draped in cloaks and suspicion. The scent of aged wine and tobacco hung heavy, and the flicker of candlelight painted faces in stark relief. Lucien's eyes adjusted quickly, landing on a table where Isabella's trusted contacts gathered. Names and tidbits flowed like the wine-coded warnings, sightings of unfamiliar figures, and talk of a secret society pulling strings from the darkness. Each piece added another thread to the growing tapestry of conspiracy. Yet, amidst the gathering storm of intrigue, Lucien felt the prickling sensation of unseen eyes, the unmistakable chill of paranoia creeping into his bones. Later, in the quiet sanctuary of Isabella's modest quarters, the two pored over fragile parchments and faded notes. The candlelight flickered, casting dancing shadows across the walls lined with maps and cryptic symbols. Lucien's fingers traced the elegant script, piecing together the cipher's hidden layers with Isabella's keen insights guiding the way. These symbols, Isabella whispered, pointing to a cluster of intertwined letters and shapes. They signify more than threats. They mark locations, meeting points, safe houses, traps. Lucien's mind raced. Each revelation deepened the danger, tightening the noose around the city's fragile order. He understood now that this was not merely a threat of violence, but a carefully orchestrated siege on the very fabric of power. As he stepped back into the moonlit streets, the cool night air bit at his skin, carrying with it the distant echo of footsteps and the faintest whisper of voices. He paused, senses heightened, aware that the shadows themselves might conceal watching eyes. The city held its breath, and so did he, caught in a web of secrets and lies that stretched beyond the alleys and into the heart of the council. The whispered warnings, the clandestine meetings, the coded messages all pointed to a single truth. Trust was a luxury Lucien could no longer afford. The cipher was more than a puzzle. It was a call to arms in a silent war waged in shadows. And the city's fate rested on his ability to unravel its secrets before the next whisper turned to a scream. With Isabella by his side, Lucien steeled himself for the trials ahead. Each step through the alleys was a gamble, each shadow a potential enemy. Yet, within the encroaching darkness, a spark of determination burned bright. The codebreaker would follow the cipher wherever it led, for, in the language of symbols and silence, lay the fragile hope to save a city on the brink. But as the night deepened and the city's heartbeat quickened, a single question gnawed at Lucien's mind. Who, amid the shifting shadows, could he truly trust? The chamber was cloaked in shadows, the faint scent of aged parchment and flickering candle wax filling the air. Lucien Delacroix adjusted his cloak as he stepped carefully into the monastery's archive, the heavy oak doors groaning softly behind him. Here, amid the labyrinth of scrolls and manuscripts, he sought the wisdom of Father Matteo, the city's spiritual advisor and keeper of many hidden truths. The priest awaited him by a towering bookshelf, his calm gaze meeting Lucien's with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "You've come far, Lucien," Father Matteo said quietly, gesturing toward a worn table scattered with documents etched in faded ink and strange symbols. "This cipher you carry is unlike any I've seen, yet it echoes patterns from the sacred texts." Lucien nodded, his sharp eyes scanning the arcane script. These symbols, religious in nature, seem to encode more than mere words. "I believe they point to a deeper conspiracy, one entwined with both faith and power, but their meaning eludes me." Together, they bent over the texts, their fingers tracing the delicate curves and angles of the cryptic markings. Candlelight danced across the stone walls, casting shifting shadows that seemed to pulse with the secrets contained within the ancient manuscripts. Father Matteo hummed softly, recalling long-forgotten lore. "Here," he murmured, pointing to a cluster of symbols resembling a cross entwined with serpentine lines. "This motif represents duality, light and shadow, truth and deception. It is a warning often used by clandestine sects to mark their influence. If this is part of your cipher, the conspiracy runs deeper than mere political ambition." Lucien's breath caught. The implications were vast. A secret faction manipulating the city's fate under the guise of religious symbolism. This changes everything. We must decipher the entire message before more lives are lost. Outside the monastery's sanctity, the city hummed with a different tension. In the ornate council chamber, Giovanni Rinaldi's dark eyes flicked toward the entrance as Lucien was announced. The council member's lips curled into a thin smile, concealing his growing unease. Political rivalries simmered beneath the polished surface of the marble walls. and Lucien's investigations threatened to upset the delicate balance. Codebreaker, Giovanni's voice was smooth but edged with steel. Your pursuits, while intriguing, risk destabilizing the order we have so painstakingly maintained. Lucien met his gaze steadily. The order is already at risk. If the cipher's warnings hold true, the council itself is the target. Ignoring this threat is far more dangerous. A murmur rippled through the gathered nobles. Giovanni's eyes narrowed, and he leaned forward. Be cautious, Lucien. Not all allies wear their true colors openly. The warning hung between them like a dagger's edge. Later that evening, Lucien returned to the solitude of the chapel, the stained glass windows filtering the moonlight into shards of color that played across the stone floor. Father Matteo joined him, holding a small parchment with newly interpreted symbols. This pattern, the priest explained, links the cipher to an ancient order once thought dissolved. Their reach, however, appears far from forgotten. They operate in the alleys and shadows, guiding events unseen. Lucien's fingers trembled slightly as he absorbed the revelation. We must expose them before the next assassination. Suddenly, a faint sound outside the chapel door made Lucien tense. He stepped into the alley beyond, ears straining against the distant chorus of the city's nocturnal life. A shadow flickered at the corner of his vision, vanishing before he could focus. The city's eyes were watching, always watching. He whispered into the night, I will unravel this, or die trying. As the candle flame flickered low, the cipher's secrets grew ever more tangled. The line between friend and foe blurred, and the stakes climbed higher with every passing moment. Lucien knew the path ahead was fraught with peril, but his resolve was unshaken. The city's fate depended on his next move, and in the alleys of power, trust was a currency more precious and dangerous than gold. The night deepened, shadows lengthened, and the game of codes and conspiracies continued, with Lucien at its heart. Determined to pierce the veil before the city's fragile peace was shattered irrevocably. The next morning, as dawn's first light spilled over the terracotta rooftops, Lucien prepared to return to the council chambers. His mind churned with Father Matteo's insights and Giovanni Rinaldi's veiled threats. Each step through the bustling streets was measured, each glance over his shoulder wary. The city was alive with whispers, and Lucien was determined to listen carefully. In the crowded marketplace, a faint rustle near a fruit stall caught his attention. Isabella Fiora's sharp eyes met his for a brief moment. She nodded subtly, a silent signal that her network was active, and the city's secrets were stirring. Lucien allowed himself a brief, cautious smile. Allies were rare, but he would need every one of them if he was to survive the coming storm. His journey through the shadows was only beginning, and the cipher's full meaning awaited revelation in the days ahead. Days that would test his intellect, his courage, and his very trust in those around him, and in the labyrinth of codes, alliances, and doubts. One truth was clear: no one was safe, and every secret carried the weight of life and death. The chapter closes as Lucien steps out of the chapel into the awakening city, the morning light casting long shadows behind him. Behind those shadows, enemies and mysteries alike await, and the Codebreaker's next move will shape the fragile balance of power in the city-state. The silence before the storm was deafening. The tavern was thick with smoke and murmurs, the low hum of voices weaving round the flickering candlelight like a living shroud. Lucien Delacroix sat in a shadowed corner, his lean frame hunched over a rough wooden table. His sharp eyes, usually so steady and calculating, now betrayed a storm of disbelief. Across from him sat Rinaldo, a man Lucien had once counted as a trusted ally. The weight of years spent unraveling codes and secrets together had built a fragile bridge of trust. Now, that bridge was crumbling. Why, Ronaldo? Lucien's voice was barely more than a whisper, but it cut through the tavern's din like a blade. Why feed Marcellus? Why betray everything we've worked for? Ronaldo's eyes darted nervously, his facade of calm shattered. You don't understand, Lucien. The council's corruption runs deeper than you imagine. Marcellus offers a new order, a chance to cleanse the rot. I did what I thought was right. Lucien's fingers clenched into fists, the cryptic symbols he habitually sketched now blurred in his mind. You've endangered us all, and yourself. The betrayal stung more than any physical wound. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt, the alleys and shadows of the city closing in with suffocating weight. But Lucien's resolve hardened. He couldn't afford despair. Outside, rain began to fall in heavy sheets, drumming a relentless rhythm on the cobblestones. Isabella Fiora appeared at the tavern's threshold, her sharp eyes scanning the room before settling on Lucien. Without a word, she beckoned him silently. Trust was a scarce commodity now, and Isabella's loyalty was the fragile lifeline he clung to. They slipped out together, the night swallowing them as they moved through the labyrinth of narrow alleys. Each step was measured, each breath cautious. The city was alive with unseen threats. Shadows shifted, and the distant tolling of bells marked an ominous cadence. Assassins, loyal to Marcellus, prowled the streets, hunting for the codebreaker who threatened to unravel their plans. Isabella's knowledge of the city's underbelly was unmatched. She led Lucien through hidden passages and forgotten doorways, her movements graceful and precise. We must stay one step ahead, she murmured, her voice steady despite the danger pressing close. Lucien nodded, the weight of the cipher heavy in his satchel. Every symbol, every coded message pulsed with urgency. The betrayal had not only compromised their safety, but threatened to undo all progress in decoding the deadly puzzle. Back in his cramped study, Lucien lit a single candle. Its flickering flame cast dancing shadows across parchment strewn with fragments of the cipher. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the intricate symbols once more. Each glyph carried secret keys to preventing the next assassination. Yet with each discovery came new layers of complexity and treachery. A sudden noise outside made him freeze. Footsteps, soft but purposeful, echoed in the corridor. Lucien's heart hammered. He reached instinctively for a concealed dagger as the door creaked open. But it was Isabella, her face flushed from the chill and urgency of the night. "We can't stay here," she whispered urgently. "They know where you are. Marcellus's reach is longer than we feared." The city itself seemed to hold its breath, a Renaissance maze, where every shadow concealed a threat, every whisper carried a warning. Above, in the gilded darkness of a balcony overlooking the city square, Marcellus Varelli watched with cold, calculating eyes. His aristocratic attire betrayed nothing of the storm brewing beneath his calm exterior. To him, Lucien was a mere pawn in a larger game of power and chaos. As the night deepened, Lucien and Isabella vanished into the labyrinth of alleys, their fates intertwined with the city's fragile balance. The betrayal within had fractured their circle, but it had not broken their will. The cipher's secrets demanded to be uncovered, and Lucien knew that only by trusting Isabella and sharpening his own instincts could he hope to survive the shadows closing in. "We must move quickly," he whispered, "before the next shadow falls." The alley echoed with their footsteps, a fleeting rhythm of hope against the encroaching darkness. But in the heart of the city, treachery and danger waited, patient, relentless, and deadly. The web tightens, the candle flickered low, casting a wavering light across the scattered parchments that littered Lucien Delacroix's cluttered desk. The small chamber he occupied reeked of old ink, damp wood, and the faint iron tang of fear. Outside, the Renaissance city-state was cloaked in darkness, its narrow alleys whispering secrets and shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly. Tonight, however, Lucien was not merely a scholar poring over dusty manuscripts. He was a man on the precipice of revelation. Isabella Fiora sat opposite him, her sharp eyes reflecting the pale glow of the candlelight. Her fingers traced the edges of a folded letter, its seal broken but still bearing the crimson wax emblem, a symbol that Lucien recognized but could not yet place. "These letters," Lucien murmured, "they're not just correspondence. They're a map, a web of coded messages connecting the assassinations we've been tracking." Isabella leaned closer, the low murmur of the city filtering through the shuttered window. "And they all lead to one name, Marcellus Varelli." Lucien's breath caught. The exiled noble's name was not unfamiliar. It echoed through the city's political corridors like a ghost. Once a respected council member, now a shadowy figure orchestrating chaos from the fringes. The letters hinted at a secret society, a cabal operating beneath the veneer of civility, pulling strings to dismantle the fragile peace. "These ciphers," Lucien said, his fingers trembling slightly as he turned a parchment over, "they're layered. It's not just a message, it's a declaration of war." Isabella nodded, her usual calm replaced by a rare tension. "I've heard whispers in the alleys, murmurs of a faction growing bolder, striking at the council's heart." The room seemed to shrink around them, the weight of the knowledge pressing in. Lucien's mind raced, piecing together fragments of betrayal and ambition. Suddenly, a faint sound drifted from the street below, a soft footfall, careful and measured. Both froze, eyes darting to the window. In the darkness, a figure moved with predatory grace, shadow merging with shadow. Alessandra Sforza. Lucien had heard of her, an assassin, as cold as the steel she wielded. Her reputation was whispered in fear, a ghost in the labyrinthine alleys, loyal only to Marcellus Varelli. She was more than a threat. She was a living embodiment of the conspiracy's deadly reach. Isabella's voice barely rose above a whisper. "She watches." Lucien's heart pounded. The game had shifted. No longer was this a puzzle to be solved in dusty halls. It was a battle for survival, played out in the city's darkest corners. Determined, Lucien gathered the letters, the cipher secrets burning in his mind. "We must move quickly. The web tightens, and every thread pulls us closer to danger." They left the chamber, slipping through the city's winding streets, where light fought the encroaching shadows. Each alleyway seemed to breathe with malice, every whispered footstep a reminder that they were not alone. As they reached a secluded tavern, the murmur of voices provided a fragile cloak. Huddled in a shadowed corner, Lucien and Isabella shared their findings with a select few allies, their words a careful dance of code and caution. The revelation of the secret society's existence sent ripples through their ranks, igniting a flame of urgency. Meanwhile, in an opulent chamber far from the alleys, Marcellus Varelli sat before a roaring fire, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows across his aristocratic features. His dark eyes gleamed with cold calculation as he reviewed reports from his informants and assassins alike. The city was a chessboard, and each move brought him closer to toppling the council. "The codebreaker grows closer," he murmured, a cruel smile touching his lips. "Let the game begin anew." Back in the city's underbelly, Lucien's resolve hardened. The cipher was no longer just a mystery. It was a battle cry. Each symbol, Each encrypted letter was a thread in a tapestry of betrayal and power. The assassin stalking him was a reminder that the stakes were life and death. As night deepened, the city held its breath. The web was tightening, and the shadows whispered promises of chaos. Lucien knew that to save the city, he would have to confront not only the secrets hidden in ink and cipher, but the very darkness that lurked in human hearts. With steely determination, he whispered to Isabella, "We face a storm, but we must be the calm within it." The alleys awaited, silent and watchful. And somewhere within them, Alessandra moved, a shadow with a blade, ready to strike. The game was far from over, and Lucien Delacroix was running out of time.